Imagine giving your last dollar to a complete stranger, only to find out he'd one day be the love of your life. This is not just a story about kindness, it's about destiny, betrayal, identity, and a twist that shook two families forever. Stay till the end, you won't believe what happens in Chapter 4. And before we dive in, don't forget to subscribe for more jaw-dropping true story-inspired dramas that'll restore your faith in humanity or challenge it. The dollar and the diner. Emma left the diner that day feeling emptier and yet somehow lighter. She had given away her last physical dollar, but something about the man's eyes and grateful smile gave her a strange inner warmth. She walked 11 blocks home in soggy sneakers and cried into her thrift store couch. The next few weeks were rough. She pawned her laptop, borrowed from friends who didn't have much themselves, and finally landed a few hours at a dry cleaning spot that barely covered her transit pass. She never told anyone about the diner moment. It felt too sacred, too strange to explain. Marcus, on the other hand, never forgot the woman with the kind eyes and the dollar that warmed his stomach and heart that day. Marcus was not homeless, he was undercover, in a sense. After losing his brother to a senseless act of violence tied to racial profiling and privilege, Marcus, a Harvard MBA and the COO of a rising tech brand, decided to spend 30 days experiencing the raw lives of people below the poverty line for a documentary series he was secretly funding. The diner was day 27. He had already spent nights in shelters, skipped showers, and been ignored like invisible fog. But Emma saw him, and that changed everything. When she walked into his company building that morning in a second-hand gray pantsuit and sat nervously outside the HR office, Marcus almost spilled his coffee when he saw her. He asked to interview her himself. She didn't recognize him at first, but when he leaned forward and whispered, "I never got to say thank you for the lunch," her jaw dropped and her face went ghost-white. Emma got the job. She worked hard, impressing everyone with her organization, grit, and quiet resilience. Marcus kept his distance at first, choosing to observe her from afar. It wasn't until a company retreat to Lake Geneva that he finally asked her to walk with him by the water. They talked for hours. He confessed everything, who he really was, the social experiment, his reasons, and how her one act of kindness cut through the noise of his 27 days like a lightning bolt. Emma felt overwhelmed but strangely honored. Over time, they became friends, then something more, cautiously. But Emma had secrets too. She had an ex-boyfriend, Trevor, who had left her the moment she lost her job. Now he was back, not for love but because he discovered Emma's company was on the verge of selling to a billion-dollar investor, and she might be tied to a big payout. Trevor hacked her emails, leaked a confidential file, and when the FBI launched a probe into the company breach, Emma was framed. Marcus was forced to suspend her pending investigation, and her heart shattered, not because she lost her job, but because Marcus didn't defend her. "I wanted to, Emma," he said through gritted teeth, "but they said if I protected you, it would look like favoritism, or worse." She walked out crying, thinking it was the end. For 3 months, she disappeared from Marcus' world, working odd jobs, sleeping on couches, and trying to prove her innocence. Emma finally tracked down an email that showed Trevor's involvement, linked to a coffee shop login he used once on her phone. With that evidence, she stormed into Marcus' building with fire in her eyes. When the board confronted Trevor and he confessed, Emma was immediately cleared. Marcus begged for her forgiveness, but Emma stayed silent. "You doubted me," she said. "You were the only person who knew my soul, and you let them break me." Marcus fell to his knees. In front of the entire executive board, he said, "You didn't just save me from hunger. You saved me from arrogance, from living life behind glass. You showed me real love before you knew my name. And I lost you when I should have fought harder. I'm not making that mistake again." He pulled out a small box. A modest, vintage diamond ring. "Emma Jacobs, will you forgive me and will you marry me?" There was silence, and then a whisper. "Yes, but not because of the ring. Because you remembered the lunch." Months later, their engagement party was a mix of glamour and realness, from CEOs to janitors, artists to ex-cons. Emma made sure everyone had a seat. But one person stood out in the crowd: Marcus' mother, Judith, a tall, stern woman who hadn't spoken to Marcus in years because of his choices in life and business. She approached Emma, looked her in the eye, and said, "You remind me of someone. My sister. She gave everything away for love. Don't break his heart." And welcome to the family. The wedding was set for spring. Everything felt perfect until Emma received a letter from a hospital she'd never heard of. It was about her mother, who had died when Emma was just 6 years old. The letter included DNA test results tied to a research study on familial illness. Emma learned that her mother had been adopted, and that she, Emma, was biracial. Her father, according to the attached name, was none other than Michael Dillard, Marcus' uncle. Emma's world spiraled. Was she marrying her cousin? A few frantic tests later, the truth unfolded. Marcus' uncle had a child he never acknowledged. A girl he thought had been lost in a closed adoption. Emma was that child. But after deeper legal reviews, it turned out Marcus and Emma were not biologically related. Marcus' uncle was not a blood uncle, but a lifelong family friend given honorary title. The relief that washed over them was title. But the emotional chaos bonded them deeper. Emma realized her destiny had come full circle, not just to love, but to her roots, her culture, and her true self. On their wedding day, the minister said, "They say $1 can't buy much these days, but once it bought lunch." And that lunch became love, legacy, and a future built not on wealth, but on soul. The crowd wept. Emma and Marcus kissed under a canopy of rose petals, and the world, for once, felt kind.